June board meeting to order. From staff, we've got Deborah Lishansky, Steve Hellman, Rebecca Tejada, Ben Emerson, and Jared Mann, and our manager, Ron Red. We've got Catherine Sellers from Jeff's law firm representing them tonight. From the board, Bill Wasserman, Brooke Booth, Don Langley, and Robert Kana, and myself, Merlin Klotz.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As a little aside on the Pledge of Allegiance, once upon a time when we took over the board, the Pledge of Allegiance wasn't said. And we shocked the world by doing the Pledge of Allegiance, and we've done it ever since. Are there any unscheduled items of public interest? Seeing none, any changes or additions to the agenda?
We have none.
Any from the board? Seeing none, any board comments?
We had a couple of them. As you know, I'm always talking about cybersecurity, and as it turns out, my email address here at the Water District got hacked, and somebody tried to get into it from Texas somewhere, so I'm not sure where. But Brian was able to get me squared away. I came in on Monday, and we were able to get me back online and stuff. But it just, it's constant war, so we have to be ever vigilant. Then the other thing that I want to mention is that this past weekend, the Colorado Gun Dog Association held their annual snake avoidance training, and the unofficial toll, we were somewhere as close to 350 dogs that we put through snake avoidance training, so it was very successful. We thought it was going to be pretty light because the number of people that had pre-signed up was only like 225, but we had a lot of walk-ons, people that had done it the year before. A lot of them just said, we know what you're doing, we'll come back and do it. We don't have to sign up online, so it worked out really well.
Nice, and I just have a quick comment. I got another Aquahawk alert at my house, and I called customer service. They were amazing, talked to me, figured everything out, and just shout out to them because they did a great job. And it's a great program.
Any other comments from the board? Leadership team comments.
Okay, I'll get us started. The reservoir is essentially hanging in there. We went down 53 acre-feet, which at this current height is about an inch. And we changed up the graph a little bit to kind of show you a smaller, closer look at it since inception. And it just shows you how we are getting so close to our peak of the 2014, 2015 timeframe. So the guys are doing a great job managing the water use out of there. I had a couple things I wanted to update the board on. I'm sorry, I have too many computer screens. There we go. The AWWA has their annual conference and exposition. It's ACE, and it's in Denver this year. And so we have a lot of people from across the country flying in here. Our operation of over almost 90 people in the last 3 days of the water plant. And our manager of the water plant had to leave a meeting early. We had a guy from Denmark who's an expert on filtration and the ceramic filters, so we went over there and picked his brain, and I think it cost a donut or something like that, so it's really great. But we have a lot of interest when the experts show up. I was talking to them. There was a lot of questions on the filters. There's some folks looking to do their own, And just apparently it was very detailed questions, a lot of pictures taken, and it sounds like it went really, really well. But a lot of people. Today we had a Korean delegation show up to look at it as well. So that's just fun. We also have people at the conference. I was invited, the AWWA CEO, David LaFrance, he always invites me to his CEO dinners, and I decided to go this year, and it was really nice. There's 50 of us from across the country, and I would say what I learned is we all have challenges, no matter what state you're in. So that was comforting to know. But it was a good opportunity to meet people. We also had an SDA, the Special District Association Regional Workshop here. And I only bring that up because it's so nice that our industry committees and organizations are getting used to using us as a place to meet. And what it does for me, what I've noticed is I get to see the leadership of these organizations on a more regular basis than I ever have, and so it's really nice. So I just want to let you know that was going up. A quick update on our CFO recruiting effort. Steve decided to not retire, and life's good. So, have Steve on board through a contract to help with transitioning type of things. But we had, as of a couple weeks ago, we had 34 applicants. The recruiter is very excited about them. They have the experience we're looking for. But what was interesting is they were excited that the job was available at Parker Water, or some of them, and the reasons were cited. They love the culture that they've heard about, and we have a stable board. So congratulations. So that's helping bring recruiters in. As far as the process, I believe it's next week. We meet with the recruiter to try to get that number down, and then a week or two later, we will do Teams interviews, and then we will get that brought down even further and bring in the top 2 or 3 for a personal visit. So we're getting there. And then I will be out of the state, actually, for the next few days. And so Rebecca is the acting district manager. I'll be back probably Thursday morning, Wednesday night or Thursday morning. So I'll be up in Montana. I have total access up there for most of the time, so feel free to call. But Rebecca will be taking over while I'm gone. So any questions? All right. So I'd like to introduce Ben Emerson. I forgot James is on vacation. So Ben is the manager who runs our wastewater.
Everybody knows Ben.
Well, if you've been to any of his wastewater presentations, everyone knows Ben.
Everybody knows Ben.
So welcome.
Well, thank you very much. And it is a great opportunity to be here and present for operations. And let's see if... just to start off with some numbers across operations right now, I really do like this slide. It really shows kind of how our operations is all connected together. And I asked James where I should begin. He said it was open to whatever I want. And since I'm on the green side of the circle, I'm going to start with the water reclamation facilities. And so what we're seeing is in May, we saw an increase in flows to 4.4 million gallons per day. Cherry Creek Pump Station, we're seeing a decrease in May for flows there, but I know the Water Resources team is really excited to get those flows up when they're able to. Ruderhouse Reservoir volume down a little bit from May, tying into the CCPS flow, and also that we're turning on the water purification or increasing flows at the purification facility. So water purification facility, we've got flows up from April. We're at 5 MGD in May, and probably holding somewhere around there through the water season, maybe up a little bit more in future months. Well house flows have come up quite a bit to 7.7 million gallons per day. We are seeing demand. You know, as temperatures rise, demand is really increasing quite a bit. And I think we did see kind of a real dramatic upswing in demand in the system recently with the warmer weather kind of all of a sudden taking off. So June's probably going to be quite a bit higher. And then our average production flow in May was 12.7. So you can really see kind of that start of our water season going on. And so then just some numbers, kind of year over year water production by source. So May of this year, water purification facility was up a little bit. Our wells have really picked up quite a bit over last year. And then our WISE usage has gone down just a little bit in May. But overall, what's that, 60 million gallons per day increase over last year in May. And then the percent renewable looks like it's down a little bit. So we're at 34% renewable supply versus 42% from the previous year. Water quality calls. So if you look at this little yellow box in the water quality calls, that's really from a topic that I will talk about here at the end, but our chlorine conversion. In May, we kind of had some calls, water quality concern calls for that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. Let's see, and locates. So locates have been up year over year. So WISE, we had 44 locates, and then 1,800 locates for Parker Water. So up a little bit from last year at this time as well. And before questions, I was asked to give a little update on a big project for operations, which was the chlorine conversion. Hopefully you all got flyers for this conversion or know some about it. But just to provide a little bit of background, 6 years ago, we did convert the system from free chlorine to chloramines. That was a big project for the district. This chlorine conversion was just the opposite of that. So we went from chloramines back to free chlorine. One of the concerns, it was a known concern when we originally converted, was the formation of a biofilm in the water system. And so the switch back over to free chlorine is really meant to address that concern. Really the kind of the initiation of this project actually started about 2 years ago when we were seeing some signs in the water system of biofilm developing in our system. And so, you know, for the past really 2 years, we've been working on developing a plan to address this issue. And so then on May 5th is when we had our chlorine conversion, or initiated our chlorine conversion. And we are currently today, fully converted to free chlorine. And we're still seeking our target chlorine concentrations in the distribution system currently.
That conversion permanent or temporary or?
The original intent absolutely is that we will be on chloramines, and so we'll be converting back to chloramines sometime in the future.
That will likely happen in September. We'll use the summer and do the flushing program, and that will help kind of scrub out the pipes with the chlorine and get that biofilm out, and then we'll convert back to chloramine. And it may be something we have to do about every 6 years. A lot of systems that are on chloramine have to go through that process.
Do you do a visual inspection?
There's actually analytical testing that we do out in the system where we're able to actually test for ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is kind of a metabolic byproduct for microbes. And so we're able to take this ATP test and understand what that growth is on the pipes, if it is in existence, if it's no longer in existence. And so that is a testing that our laboratory is performing routinely out in the system.
So you'll stay with chlorine until you see that go to like nearly zero then, right?
It's actually, the last number I saw, I believe it was like 2, which is really just about there. But we're going to stay free chlorine for a while, and then through the flushing season, and really try to get a really fresh clean of our entire system. And so, yeah, so then we'll do that conversion back. But just a couple of highlights I really wanted to point out is that really the first one is our staffing. So through this whole project, we did a lot of planning. I mean, this was 2 years ahead of, like 2 years in advance of actually this conversion. We began the planning process. Our team did develop a project management plan, and we also developed a playbook to help with internal coordination. The other aspect of this project is coordination, not just internally, but to our customers. That was a huge outreach lift for a lot of our organization. We also had our neighboring utilities that we had to coordinate with because we do have some interconnects and exchange of water. And then there was also coordination with the state of Colorado and their drinking water program to ensure that we were meeting all of our Safe Drinking Water Act requirements in this whole event. And then also for our operations staff, our wells and distribution staff, they were out throughout the system, flushing all of the dead ends throughout our system until they were testing for a free chlorine residual. And that's telling us that we went from chloramines now to this free chlorine disinfectant in our system. Also wanted to highlight the customer impact. So we tried to mitigate it initially with those FAQs that were sent out to all of our customers. Through the whole process, we did receive 45 customer calls. Most of these calls, though, it ended up being a very positive interaction with our public. It was a lot of education and just developing an understanding of what we were doing. So overall, we were really pleased with that result. And then I asked our water production and distribution manager, Dylan, what was most important that I share with you guys. And he said that really this conversion is a single piece in what he's considering a 6-year project that he's really focused on improving exceptional water quality throughout our distribution system. So this is kind of a piece of a larger project for him that his team's really focused on. And then I wanted to highlight that moving forward internally, we are going to debrief on this entire project. It's part of our continuous improvement culture. And ultimately that our distribution team, we're going to refine our processes and procedures so that in those other conversions that may happen, every 6 years or kind of to be determined, it's a rock solid project and we're able to move through it super efficient. So with that now is my final slide, if you guys have any questions.
I've got an observation I wanted to throw on the table. I noticed you used the term reclamation. Not that many years ago, we thought in terms of sewage. Today, not just the semantics, but our thought process is all water. We manufacture water. And the term sewage is no longer in our vocabulary. And that's been an evolution of several years, but that's where we are. And I think that's the role we need to keep projecting to the public. That's our mission, is manufacturing water. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that comment too, because I'm on the reclamation side, so yes.
So Ben triggered a thought I wanted to pass along. We're seeing higher usage than we think we should be seeing this time of year. And our water resource group has a modeling that tries to predict. And they were thinking of max day this summer in the 26 million gallons per day. And based on usage, taking out the flushing that we're doing, they're looking at 30 million gallons a day. And so I asked him, well, where's he seeing this from? Because it's been pretty wet, except for the last few days. And it's really, what they're noticing is the HOAs are watering 24/7. So they don't take the 10 to 6 time off. And so we're working through to make sure this isn't a crazy idea, but I think starting tomorrow, we've already got a group in our AquaHawk for HOA meters. And if anyone pings after the watering time, they'll get a notification. And we think that will really help. But if not, then we can go to the next step. But if they're watering in the wrong period, we will hold them accountable for that. So you might get some phone calls. Most of the HOA homeowner representatives are thankful for the notification. Sometimes the landscapers don't appreciate it as much, but once we're just trying to get that peak to come down a little bit for us.
Welcome, can you hear me okay on these new microphones? Wonderful. Wanted to present our typical slides with the emails. We're actually seeing a 25% increase since last month for our emails. So our team is working diligently to expand the capacity and the storage and make sure that we can account for all of the additional emails coming into our facilities. Threat landscape has stayed the same. You'll see an increase there in spyware activity, but we have not had any significant intrusions into our system, but the overall risk factor has stayed the same. Director Wasserman was highlighting cybersecurity in the news, and it tees me up perfectly for some of the types of cybersecurity events that we were seeing in the industry right now. On the left of the screen, you'll see a supply chain attack. That's something that happens upstream with some of our vendors and contractors and some of the managed service providers we have. And there was a large organization who the upstream vendor was hacked, and then the malware was provided to the utility from that upstream vendor. These are very hard to detect because they go after your vendors upstream, slip in the malware or phishingware, and then provide that application software to your teams, and you install them inside your utility, and then you are now exploited from that event. In the middle of the screen, you'll see an Internet of Things attack. It's actually utilities across the entire United States. 40,000 cameras were exploited. 11.9% of those cameras were in the water utility sector. They just did not happen to be in Colorado. It's a common attack in the Internet of Things, and I wanted to highlight this because everything we have now is a directly connected device. And so our cybersecurity analyst, our network administrator, are constantly monitoring our edge to make sure we're not having these type of intrusions into our system. And finally, on our SCADA side, the one thing we don't ever want to happen is a misconfigured or exploitable event for HMI or directly connecting to our SCADA systems. A research company found that 300 water utilities in the United States directly had exposure to the internet to control their SCADA system, and 40 of them were not protected at all. They let those agencies know we were not one of them, and they've gone now and addressed those. They've closed 95% of the utilities exposure at this point, but it's a common occurrence as we get more and more into software applications and the use of technology. Misconfigurations occur as we use third parties to provide some of those services. We're constantly monitoring our systems to make sure that we don't have these exposures.
So what's the point of attacking security cameras?
So I looked at the same thing and dove in, and the actual conversation on that was that you can use that for a botnet attack. So it's a denial of service. You can actually use the camera as a mini computer to then attack an email server or another computer and crash that system from there. So they slave them all together across the entire world and then attack one system directly from it and take it down. Yep.
Wow.
It's a scary world out there. The final slide I have for you tonight is just a status update on some of our significant projects. We're nearing the end. I'm excited to say that we're seeing the end of the road for Brightly project, which is CMMS, Spry Point, which is the CIS Customer Information System. In orange there, I wanted to highlight that our first customer service announcement will be going out in the June statement and newsletter. So we're preparing our customers for that change of service. The AquaHawk portal, that type of thing will be going away, and we'll be centralizing around that Spry CIS, Spry Engage, and how you interact as a customer with our water portal and our billing will change. And so we're going to start that communication with our customers. And then Spry Backflow, that's ahead of schedule, so we're looking to roll that out here in August as a replacement for the backflow system we currently have. So all good news. We're seeing the end of very long, extended projects coming to a close.
I think I asked this before, but is there anything the customer is going to have to do with respect to this conversion?
Yeah, so the biggest part, and they'll be communicating that with our customers, is as a safety protocol, we don't take people's passwords and user logins and move them over because we would need to know them. So they will need to re-sign up for a username and a password in that process. That's the most significant change. It's going to look and feel different, and so we will be working with our customers to make sure that they understand how to process through the pages and the communication, and we will have that training available.
Will they have to sign up again for like auto payment, or will that transfer over?
So I can get more information on you on that from Guy. My understanding is that Invoice Cloud is still a part of it, and so that will just be separating off to Invoice Cloud directly, so the auto payment stuff should not change.
I think
In theory.
given the world situation, and especially with Iran right now and the potential either Israel going in and taking out some of the nuke facilities, or potentially us doing it now, that could flare up a whole bunch of attacks on all kinds of stuff. So I would just say continue to be vigilant and be very cautious, because the bad guys are out there.
Okay, and Rebecca didn't have anything for tonight, so I think that does it for us.
Legal counsel has nothing?
I don't have anything. You're going to hear from me later, I think, probably
We will hear from you.
sufficiently.
Okay.
You're going to do the orientation? Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. That moves us on to approval of the minutes for May 22nd. Do we have any corrections or changes to the minutes? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We have a vote?
Yes.
Yes. Audit presentation.
I'm going to kick this off. So in front of you tonight, and I'm very pleased to announce that you have the completed 2024 audit. We received the highest assurance possible from the auditors. I'm both very proud and also grateful to the accounting department, especially Jeff and one of his accountants named Annette. They worked a lot of overtime over the last couple of months to get you this final, to help bring together this final product that you have in front of you tonight. With the unexpected passing of two of our coworkers during the audit, it was pretty tough, but both Jeff and Annette really stepped up, showed their dedication to the district, and got this taken care of. So very proud of both of them. I also want to thank the audit committee, of course, Don and Merlin, who are on there representing the board, and also Mike and Adam, who are back in the audience back there. And also very grateful to Plant Moran for all the hard work that their team did, again, to get you the product tonight. So Alicia's going to go through the letter to those charged with governance and talk through the audit, and we'll go from there. So, Alicia?
Thank you, Steve, and good evening. Appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all today to talk about the audit results. I too want to just thank you, Steve, Jeff, and the rest of the team for the collaboration and the effort that went into working with our team to get this point. Certainly a lot of work, but hard work pays off, right, Jeff? So thank you. I am pleased to also report, Steve talked about us being able to provide the highest level of assurance that we can offer up, and that would be an unmodified opinion, meaning that your opinion is without exception, and those stakeholders, including the board who are relying on the financial statements, can rest assured of knowing that they are materially correct and that they do comply with all the rules and regulations that the district is required to follow. I'm also pleased to share that as we, wrap up and talk about the results of year 2 with Plante Moran as the auditors, we did not have any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, meaning we really didn't have any significant audit findings. This year, that's not necessarily an easy audit outcome to get to for many organizations, just given the volume of transactions. Things get missed and errors occur. But when you do achieve it, it shouldn't go unnoticed. So I just want to give a kudos to your team for having largely a clean audit. That said, of course, we do have some best practice recommendations, and we think those are important to bring before the board and management as we make those observations throughout the course of our audit, and so we'll continue to do that. Additionally, for each and every audit that we conduct in our profession, not just at Plante Moran, but all auditors, private, public, we do have a responsibility to have communication with the board. You may recall at the onset of our audit, we would have distributed a letter that made the board aware of what our audit plan was. And so part of this required communication is really to close out that communication, let the board know that we did in fact complete our audit in accordance with the plan that we set forth, and certainly if there were any exceptions, to be able to talk through that with the governing body. So what I'd like to do today is just briefly walk through both components of the letter that you have before you. There's a section 1 and a section 2. We did spend a considerable amount of time with the audit committee going through this at length, and so I was going to go higher level, but certainly if there's something that you want me to delve into further, please stop me and let me know, and I'm happy to do so. So starting with section 1 on page 2 of the letter. Again, this is just really that follow-up communication to close out the prior communication. Not really much here in the way of exceptions. There are just a couple things that I'll point out here on page 2. About halfway down the page, you'll notice a reference to GASB 101 compensated absences. That is a new accounting standard that the district was required to implement this past year, and it really required your team to reevaluate how you were accounting for liabilities associated with unpaid and accrued compensated absences. And while it was a decent workout and analysis that had to be done by the team, ultimately it was determined that that change in accounting did not materially modify the district's obligations as recorded, and so significant changes were not made in that area. And then just down a little bit further below, we are also required to ensure you understand and are aware of any significant or sensitive estimates included in your financial statements. And this hasn't changed from our prior communication, but just a reminder that the only area we really have identified continues to be water rights. There were no significant additions to the financial records this year, so we didn't have as much work to do there, but we do draw your attention to that. And then on page 3, again, just happy to report no disagreements, no issues in getting our audit done with management. If there were any corrected or uncorrected misstatements, we'd need to make you aware. There were none. And just as we go through the rest of the page here, just, it's really just telling you that there were no exceptions, there were no significant. So this is a really, this letter is fairly boring. It's plain vanilla, and that's actually what you want. So, so that's communication number 1. Section number 2, starting on page 4, those are additional observations that we bring forth that we do feel merit the attention of management and the board. It has some ongoing recommendations for consideration to continue to further strengthen controls, operations, and best practices. We have talked about at least a couple of these this past year, and so some of it is really just an update and maybe an ongoing reminder. Starting with water rights, as everyone may recall, there was a good amount of time that was spent during last year's audit with both Plant Moran's team and the district's team, just reassessing the valuation of water rights as recorded and reflected in your financial records. The team has continued to work on that, has made some changes in the processes and policies surrounding how those assets are being recorded, but it is still a work in progress to kind of get to that itemized subledger that we would have talked about last year. It's a big project, and so we'll just continue to remind you to keep at it and ultimately work toward getting to that desired state with that subledger. Similarly, moving down to the utility billing system recommendation, again, this is another item we talked about last year, and we do commend the district for putting some controls in place, some additional controls in place, I should say, in response to some of last year's discussion. What we point out here is that the controls, because of your system limitations and because candidly of the limited number of team members that you have, the controls that you were able to put in place are detective, meaning if something goes wrong, you've put a process in place to catch it, after the fact, and that's great. That's probably the best you can do for now. At a future and desired state, and likely not until you have a new system, we'd say we'd love to see you get to the point where the controls are able to prevent anything from going awry in your system. And so that's the state that we'll continue to challenge you to work towards. And again, we know that when you're able to implement your new system, you're going to have a better setup to be able to do that. And then the last item that I want to mention is on page 5 at the top. And this is similar to the utility billing item. It's just another system best practice recommendation that although there are really great and sound processes around reconciliations and checks and balances, we think there's an opportunity to layer in another user review within the general ledger. Again, we've talked extensively with the team, and there's already ongoing discussions about what that might look like, particularly given that you've already added a new member to your accounting team that may be able to contribute to that process. The other items here, we just leave in the interest of the board and of management. Most of them are, legislative accounting items the team will have to deal with over the next 2 to 3 years. The item on cyber, we know you all are into that, and Jared, you talked about some of that in your update. We are just continuing to see our clients, really, we're all seeing it, right? Turn on the news, and every week it's someone different is in a compromised situation. So just a reminder there to, continue to do the things that you're doing, test all those systems and controls that you have in place, and just continue to mitigate the risk. And again, we know you know that, but we're just seeing so much of it in our client base that we've been just throwing a reminder in there for governance. That would conclude the items that I wanted to bring to your attention, but certainly if there's questions or comments, I'm happy to take them at this time.
Anybody else have any questions?
I'm good.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for another good audit experience, all of you, the whole team. Okay. Accounts payable, May 16 to 31. Anybody have any questions that haven't been answered yet?
I do.
Speak up, Don.
Yeah, I don't know if this is as much a question or observation or kind of a combination of both, but I was a little taken back by the number of P-card charges in this month's summary. And then I was also, there were some of these charges that were pretty large, $4,000 or $5,000, $6,000. There was one that was over $11,000. And that just seemed, again, this is a question, it just seemed like maybe beyond the purpose of the P-card, which was supposed to facilitate, really rapid purchases for stuff that was really needed. So if you just give me a little color on that, I would be.
Sure. So the P cards, you actually had 2 months included in this month's board's packet. Accounting was a little bit behind in posting some of the transactions from a previous
So I
month.
was right, there were a lot.
So yes, you are correct, there were a lot. As far as the larger ones, we have an active program where we're trying, if a vendor accepts a credit card, that we will do that. And we have a card that we can do. It's not a physical card, it's just a card we can send to a vendor so they can actually charge something for us. And by doing that, we're just saving time with not having to write a check and all those types of things. It still goes through all the approvals and everything that we normally do, but there is a charge by accounting to try to charge. That's a little pun intended, I guess. There is a task where accounting is trying to move people to these electronic payments
Yeah.
so that we can not have to write a check and stuff like that, which is
Yeah,
much more expensive.
I get that, but then we kind of lose what the purpose was for that compared to, you know, the other entries in the payable.
So these, how can I put this? The larger items that you see that are being paid for there have already gone through the process with the directors and everything of approving the payments, including Ron. But these are like after the fact where we say, instead of paying this with a charge card or with a check or some other type of payment, we do it for a credit card. And this is the accounting department providing this generally after it has gone through the process.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I didn't doubt that, you know, all the controls were in place, and this wasn't an $11,000 dinner for the accounting department. But, you know, on all the other, in the check register, we know exactly, you know, it says Xcel Energy, you know, that's what the payment was for. If I look at this $11,000, I really don't know where that went. Not that I don't trust that it was an appropriate expense, it's just kind of hard to see.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it's a policy we've enacted a few years ago. So if you recall, we had 5 credit cards, but the world doesn't operate like you used to be able to go to an Ace Hardware and sign for it. So then we had to get checks, or we had to give people our credit cards. The board authorizes to go to another level to have people do it, and then another level. And if the board would like to see the credit cards, we certainly can do that. But it is a speed of business type of thing. So we have the detail on that, and we can provide that to the board as well. It's a lot of information, but it's something, if you want to see what $11,000 was spent on, that's available. I used to summarize it, but it was so much work to go through and say, here's who's spending what where. But if that's something the board wants, we can do it. Or if you want to request and see it, we can show it.
I think he's asking for the who instead of the what. Correct?
Or you want to see the individual credit cards?
No, that if you've got $11,000 charge, who is it to?
Right, so we can provide that. Yeah.
That would be one credit card for the month. So there's several transactions that are probably within that you're looking at. I don't know by myself whose particular card that is, but we can certainly pull it out for that month and get the detail on that.
Yeah, I mean, this just doesn't feel as transparent as all the other, right? And I mean, we can certainly tell people, you know, as a board that we see all the expenditures. We have that opportunity every month. And, you know, the small stuff on the P cards, if that's like, you know, somebody running in Home Depot and buying some copper fittings, we don't need to see that. But I'm curious about an $11,000 charge, you know, it just transparency. It's not distrust, right? It's not that I think somebody just, you know, that there's a control issue there, but.
Would you be interested in a threshold on that? Over 5,000, over 2,000, or is there,
So-
if it's unmanageable?
Over 2,500,
So,
or is that hard to do?
no, It's not hard. It's a lot of information coming your way. So I mean, we can provide the detail on all the credit cards, or if you have a question, we can provide the detail on the credit cards. How would the board want that information?
Are you saying like it's a credit card, like a statement?
Yeah.
I think maybe you need to look at it and come up with a practical response, a practical way to present, and without getting down in the weeds too far.
Well, it's actually, I mean, it literally is sending another file out. I mean, it's just a PDF, I believe, scan file of the actual charges, so you guys can have access and see all that. So that's certainly, we can do that. It's not, I mean, it's,
So that wouldn't be hard. That
No,
would it'd just be another page in the billing.
yeah, probably, how many credit cards do we have?
He's left.
He knew this question.
He knew the question was
Probably
coming.
75 or so.
Pages. So,
At least. There's a few that are probably going to be a couple pages. It would be the credit card statements that we could send out.
so we can provide that. What we've done in the past a lot of times is, hey, this is a big number, what'd you spend it on? We could do that as well. But it's not that much more work if it makes the board comfortable. It does go through multiple layers, but if you want to see where it's being spent, that's kind of what happened in the early years. We can certainly do that. It's easier nowadays with the electronic files.
Yeah, I don't think I'm interested in reading 75 credit card statements. But at the same time, there's, I mean, compared to the other expenditures, there is just this lack of transparency here that I'm a little bit concerned about. So maybe we table that discussion for a while and we'll talk about it again.
Why don't we pick like a minimum, if it's 2,500 or 3,000 or something above that, on charges that are, of a higher nature of something, and I don't know if that's the right numbers, but maybe provide the information on what was purchased with those numbers, rather than looking at 75 pages of.
Going to do that?
Yeah, we can do that and see if that is of
Yeah,
value.
let's try that, and then if it's,
And I get it, it's a transparency thing, so you can see where it's going. So we could pick a number.
Pick a number.
So we'll do 2,500, and you're still going to get a lot,
might.
but you might come back and say, well, make it 5,000 or whatever. But
I mean, just scanning this, I mean, that's not going to be a ton of them, maybe 20. Of course, this is 2 months. Know that now.
But just for clarification, each line item here is the total for one card per that month. So if you see the 11,000, that's not a single purchase. That's the sum of a full month on that particular card. So that would be, so I don't think this is, unless I'm wrong, but this isn't just, one transaction for 11,000.
it's a month's worth of
It's a
charges.
month's worth. So if you're to look at this, and there's, I don't know, what, there could be.
I stand corrected because
Yeah,
I
there could
thought it
be
was just a
50
transaction.
transactions within that 11,000, correct? Yeah.
And most likely, my guess is going to be, it was for getting into the ACE conference probably. But again, it's easy enough to send you guys. So I don't know how much time we're talking. It's probably minutes to be able to pull together the,
So it's going through the credit card statements, finding the particular ones, and moving them to a different file.
so let us try it. If we come back and say, that just took us 6 hours, how about you just ask us if you have a question? Or if it took us 10 minutes, we'll send it all you want. So we'll pick a 2,500 number and just see how it goes.
Well, I think Steve needs to just take a look at what's practical, knowing our concern and what's practical. And if we're in the process of evolving more to those cards, then this is just the front end of the problem, of the issue. And so I think we need look at it from a long-range perspective of where this thing's going to go.
Yeah. It's never a bad thing to have more eyeballs on what we're spending.
So, okay. We're in the middle of accounts payable. With questions, any other questions on accounts payable? Do we have a motion?
Moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. We have a vote?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, resolution 2025-03, intent to reimburse, second reading.
Yeah, so we talked about this at the last meeting. It's basically setting up a resolution to declare the district's intent to reimburse itself once bonds are issued in the future, sometime in the future. The reason we're doing this is the wastewater plant is getting kicked off right now. It doesn't mean we have to reimburse ourselves with that, but it at least sets up the opportunity for us to do that. So if interest rates are good, which who knows if that will be the case, or we have additional cash, we could use that. It's, again, just declaring the intent that we can do this if we want to. The current rules allow us to do this, and that could change too. Again, if tax-free bonds are taken out of the permissible obligations of the district, we could do it regardless, but if we're doing tax-free bonds, the district has to declare its intent prior to those bonds in order to be able to do this. I just wanted to make sure to get it in front of you before my retirement so that it's not something the new CFO has to worry about. I don't anticipate we actually do any borrowing until 2026 or 2027. A lot can happen there. We also talked about the big, beautiful bill that's going through Congress right now. It was in the House version, tax-free issuances were still okay, but it could always change in the Senate, and we don't know what's going to happen in the final minutes there with doing that. So this, again, just sets us up to be able to do that in the future if we want to reimburse ourselves. Payback on the bonds, currently it's just expected they'll be paid for via tap fees that we collect on the wastewater side, and we go from there. So staff recommends that we approve this to give the opportunity to the district at some time in the future to reimburse itself if needed.
Question?
So just make sure I understand, what we're talking about is if in the interim between now and when we sell the bonds and get proceeds, if we have expenditures that we take out of operating funds or capital funds for this project, we can then turn around after the bond sale and replenish, reimburse those funds, correct? That's
That is
what
correct.
this is doing, right?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Without this resolution, that's not possible, correct?
That is correct. Unless it's taxable bonds, then that is still permitted in the future. It's the tax-free bonds that you have to declare your intent if you're going to do that.
So this is an enabling move, is what it is, right? Yeah.
Any other questions?
Makes sense. I think we need to do it.
Do this. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Second. And a second? Do we have a vote?
Yes.
Yes. Resolution 2025-04, North Plant Expansion, Design Build, first reading.
I'll be presenting that this evening. So today is the first reading for a resolution to use the Design Build Collaborative Delivery Method for the North Plant expansion. A resolution is required anytime you use an alternative delivery method to perform a project. So as you know, due to an increase of flows at the North Plant, you've seen this graph before, we have moved the expansion timing up. So projections from the master plan indicate that we will exceed the current capacity of the plant by around mid-2027. With that timing, it's important for us to utilize a project delivery method that increases the efficiency in project schedule, in project budget, and in phasing opportunities. This slide is not new to you. Emily presented it when you approved the owner's advisor contract. This slide presents the design build method as compared to the traditional design bid build method. And so in design build, the owner has one contract with a designer contractor team. And that team really creates a more efficient delivery method.
Does that team then act as a joint venture, or do you?
They can. In fact, we have gotten the proposals, and the team that we're going to present to you next week is a joint venture team between Burns and Mack and Garney. So that'll be spoiler alert.
So it literally becomes one contract?
It's one contract.
Yeah.
Yeah. Typically, the contractor is the lead of it. In this case, it's a joint venture. So using that design build method allows us to, again, integrate that contractor into all phases of the project. So the preliminary phase with the alternatives analysis, the design, the pre-construction phase. And this integration is really essential because this is going to be a phased construction. And we need to keep the plant operating during the construction. So doing the design with the contractor there is really beneficial to this project. Plus, design build has many benefits over other delivery methods when you compare it to either design bid build or even CMAR, which is also an alternative delivery method. It just exceeds everything from costs, schedule, a decrease in budget bloating, and schedule growth. In fact, oftentimes you can do a project twice as fast using design build as the traditional design bid build.
What's CM&R?
That's construction management at risk. It's similar.
Okay.
Right. You do still have two contracts, but you're bringing in that contractor at around that 30% phase.
Where's this data come from?
It actually comes from the Design Build Institute of America. So that organization has compiled all this information.
There's an institute?
There is. It's DBIA. In fact, a shout out to Stephanie Sansom. She's just completed the course and passed the test, and so she is now DBIA certified. So because we do have such a tight timeline, we really think it's critical that we use the design build method for the delivery of the North Plant. And then just an update on the schedule for this, the approvals necessary to get this project kicked off. April 1st, we sent out an RFP for the design build. May 15th is when we received the proposals. We've reviewed them, and we have selected the team that we're going to bring forward for your approval. Today is the first reading of the resolution. Again, you need a resolution to use this method of delivery. And then on June 26th, our next meeting, we will do the second reading of this resolution. And then we'll also bring forward the contract for the design builder for your request for approval.
So just out of curiosity, why do we need a resolution to use this process? It doesn't fit within our bylaws, or?
As far as I know, it's actually standard for all utilities have to go through the process and get the board buy-in to use this. I don't know if Catherine has additional information.
So there's actually a state law regarding this, and it requires the board to sign off on it and approve it. So it's the process. It is.
Well, we should do it then.
Are there any questions?
I have one question, not specifically to, I mean, it's kind of related to this, but we know we're going to, in the future, we're going to have to do this not only now, but again, as we continue to grow out. Do we have enough room at the North Plant to really expand to what we think the build-out will be?
We've laid out the full build-out, and right now we do have we believe we have enough property out there for the full expansion. There's been alternatives looked at. Do we have to make the pond out there, it's called Horseshoe Pond, do we ever have to make that smaller? Is there ever a time where we have to utilize space that the admin building sits on, right? Right now, those aren't part of the plan, but there are things that we have looked at and considered. But at this point, we've been able to lay out all of the different processes and buildings on our current site.
This is 2 MGD, and we've got to get capacity for another 2 MGD.
Right, so this expansion actually is a 2.8 MGD expansion, and then at some point, we imagine that plant to get up to 10. So we'll be at 6.8 after this, and then we'll have to do another expansion in the future to
Okay.
get to 10.
Any other questions?
So 10 is our build-out number, huh?
It's actually 12, but we can't forget about the south plant. 10 is the build-out of the north plant.
Robert, your wheels are turning.
No, I think it's a good alternative.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
First reading? No more questions? We'll look for you next meeting. Request for approval, changes to Ryder Hess Recreation Rules and Regulations.
Okay, I'll take this one. It was some simple changes to the regulations. The county has asked that they wanted approval from the board of directors before they change the rules and regs that we currently have. And really, as I mentioned in the memo, the two changes are updating the fishing regulations to allow catch and keep of certain species and based on length. I believe it's the walleye, bass, and yellow perch that we'll be able to take out starting July 1st. They wanted to wait till midsummer to get past the spawning season. And so that's one of the requests. We're thinking of taking that out of having to come to you guys all the time. It'd be more of a get approval to be able to make those changes because we hope to continue to expand the catch and keep. And I'm not sure that's all that important for our board of directors to have to approve all the time, but we'll work through that. But this time around, they're asking for approval on that. And the other one is the allowing trolling motors, electric trolling motors for fishing boats only. And as I mentioned, it was always originally envisioned that we'd have some type of trolling motor for fishermen out there. But it's been delayed because really fishing hasn't kicked in until about last year. The trolling motors are allowed under the EA that we did. Traditional gas motors are not. The idea again is our reservoir isn't set up well for trails all around it. In fact, shore fishing I think is somewhat difficult. But this is to help people with their fishing out there. I asked the county, of course, the number one concern is always water quality. And the county, we did their research, they came back, I think it's essentially the smallest trolling motor they make. It's a wakeless rule, you can't go too fast. They've downsized, it's not horsepower in electric motors, but it's thrust, that's what it is. To do that, concern always is invasive species. And so this, if you think of it, a lot of times I think of the big boats, where you got the motor and the blades. And a lot of times the motors suck water in, and you got a lot of nooks and crannies for things to hide. These are essentially a shaft with propeller on it, and they have to be removable, which helps them with the risk of invasive species because they don't have all the bells and whistles. So I talked to the county. They have experience in this. They feel it's about as much work as like a paddleboard or canoe or kayak. Every single thing is investigated before it goes in or inspected. And so I didn't see a problem, but again, it's a board decision on that. And so I answer any questions if there are any.
Bill, you have thoughts?
Well, today's modern technology, there's there's electric motors out there that can propel a boat pretty darn fast. So they've cut it down. We don't want that, and if we have to be careful, and I think the county did a good job by limiting the thrust in it, which is like the old electric motors that when I was growing up and fishing bass tournaments and so on, it's pretty simple to do. I think it's a good idea. One, to allow people to do it, it'll help them get to wherever they're going for fishing purposes, and would not be a significant, if we keep to this limit, there won't be a significant risk to the reservoir. So I think it's a good idea.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I got a couple questions. Yeah, it says maximum thrust of 55 pounds. Is that like on a nameplate on the motor, or I mean, how do you know?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what they come, when they'll have that designation. It might be on the motor now, but that's 55 is pretty small. I mean, they've got some that are way higher than that.
We have a ranger that used to work at Chatfield, and he did verify that that information is on the actual motor.
Yeah, it's usually.
And so if it wasn't on the motor, then that motor probably wouldn't be allowed in, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And they're pretty diligent on that.
Yeah. You know, I asked you the question, you know, looking at Aurora's regulations and their requirement that all watercraft and motors be registered with the state of Colorado according to state boating regulations. And you said, we're doing that, or we will do that?
I believe what we can do, so in talking with the manager, that's required, but we can actually, I think she looks at it as it's actually required by the state to have that information, but we could add a bullet point to the regulation that says it, outright says it. And actually there is a RAB meeting tomorrow, so it's very timely, and we can add that.
I mean, that's just a little extra security to what's going on. You know, I worry about somebody dragging something in, you know that. So the other question, you know, in your email you said 6,714 visitors last year to the reservoir, and we're currently limited by parking. I don't recall from the master plans, I mean, we're going to expand parking, aren't we not? Or is this it?
We don't have any room to expand parking, so there is no plan in the master plan to expand parking that I can remember. There might.
Is it going to be paving the lots or something? I just seem to recall.
Well, they're going to pave the existing lots we have.
Yeah.
I believe the incline parking lot might grow outside of the reservoir, but we actually have no more room up there for parking lots. And when there's 230 parking spaces, it's a little misleading because when you drive in, if you recall, there's a parking lot pretty close to the entrance. That's a half mile away from to get into the water. So that doesn't get used very often, especially if you're hauling a kayak with you.
Hikers might.
Right, so it's probably more in the 150 range up on top, but we do have 230 spaces.
Yeah. So our traffic number, the number of visitors that we should expect is probably somewhere around this 6,000-7,000 a year?
Well, we haven't hit the high traffic numbers yet. So I believe they've filled up the parking lot maybe twice in a couple of years. And that was usually a special event type of thing.
Yeah.
So I anticipate the numbers to grow, but they are capped. The throttle, so to speak, is the parking out there.
Is that parking lot above the water line if the reservoir was at 75,000?
So there's the upper parking lot by the pavilions.
Yeah.
That definitely is. If you go down to where the people launch a lot of their boats, that parking lot will be underwater, but all the facilities were designed to be unbolted and moved up. The reason we put that down there was to cut the walk period or time down there. So it gives people opportunity to drive down and drop things off or park. But we have those smaller pavilions, and that's where you see a lot of people eat lunch, that type of thing.
But the number of parking spaces you mentioned, that's above the water line?
Above the current water line, yes. That's-
Above the full water line?
No, just the current. The lot that will go underwater, it's probably 30 lot,
Okay.
but we're probably a few years from that, but
Okay.
unfortunately. But
Yeah, so, I mean, it might be 7,000, 8,000 visitors when we really get going, maybe 8, numbers like that?
they probably have that number. I'd be guessing. I was surprised that we were close. The number I gave you missed a month, so it was a little higher, but it was below 7,000 on that side. So that includes the day camps going out there and, the paddle boarders and that type of thing. And so I don't know. Again, if we fill the parking lot, and they might, right now they're 4 days a week if they go to 7 days a week. So I don't know a number on that, but I do know we require reservations, which most people are used to. That's probably our number one complaint that we hear about recreation. People don't want to reserve time to go there, but what that does is the county does not allow us, and it's a good thing, not to back traffic up on Hess. And so if you've ever been to Aurora Reservoir, which I never have, but there's 2-3 hour line waits to get into the reservoir on a Saturday. So we don't allow that. So you come in, not everyone stays there all day. So there might be some people leave and more come in. So I think the number will be higher. It could be considerably higher, but the throttle of it is you can't get any more on there.
It's not going to be like 15,000 or 12,000, I wouldn't think.
I don't know. I'll ask. I'll ask what their planning numbers
I'm
are.
just curious about that because I think with this kind of natural throttle to it, that makes me feel more comfortable about, any kind of issues that arise from people bringing nasty things in.
I could see there's an idea out there where we open earlier because the fishermen like to fish really early when it's cooler and their fish are actually biting, but they leave. But then another group comes in, the paddleboarders, canoes, kayakers type thing. So you might get more than just 230 cars for 8 hours, but you'll never have more than the 230 cars could produce. So.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody wants to pick a number, that'd be interesting to know.
Okay, I'll find a number, and it might be a conversation for the board. The way I've been operating since the inception of this is the board developed the vision of serene and tranquil. We didn't want to be the Cherry Creeks and the Chatfields with all the noise and all the parties and stuff like that. And so, and we use that a lot to push back on activities. I'm not sure all of you are here when we had a heavy push for float planes to be able to land and park their boats in there. And it would have brought a lot of revenue, but we didn't think that was a good idea. And so serene and tranquil are important to us. And then I feel like we are the gatekeepers to the water quality, but we're trying to create an amenity, the best amenity possible for the public that protects our water. And so we haven't brought to you a lot of the things we turned down, and I certainly can, but there's no swim beaches. We're not going to allow the original concept had a shooting range in there, and there's just a lot of things that we have taken out, including camping. Camping, it got easier to take camping out because of the fire potential. My worry was a bunch of Boy Scouts, without porta potties. So it was nice to get rid of that. And so we try to be that gate for that.
You drive in, is that when they check your car, like check your things, or is it until when you go in and then they'll check like the boats and?
So if you get an opportunity, they've really made it nice. So when you come in, you go through the gate, they have 4 lanes now, and in the morning, they open 3 of them, so you get more cars in. Just past the guard hut are now tables that they can do inspections on and move them on through. And if they get overloaded, they then send people to that first parking lot that's several hundred yards up the road and do that. So they've really put a lot of effort into making that better. This weekend, I don't know if you're aware, there's going to be, it's a town of Parker's doing a Father's Day run. And it's the first time, and I've been hoping for this forever. Of course, I won't be here, but they're going to do a 5K on our dam. And so, and they're going to time it. They've looked at the security side of it, and they have an option. If you come run that, you can stay and recreate in the water as well. And so, and they're going to talk a little bit more about it tomorrow. There will be a sheriff there. We're not expecting a problem on Hess, but it's just always good to have someone there. I could see left-hand turns backing up too much, but what they're going to do there is they're not going to stop people at the gate. They'll have their bibs, and they're just going to wave them on through. So even if you get a rush, I believe they're thinking over 200 people are going to run. They'll be able to get them off Hess and up there quick. So I think that would be a great event. So we'll see. There'll be a lot of people standing on there to make sure no one runs off the dam at some of the spots, but I think it's going to be a very, very popular event.
Any other questions? Okay, it's an action item. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Do we have a vote?
Yes.
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 Board member orientation.
All right. So Jeff is on vacation, but it's probably a good thing because we're probably getting a much better video this time around.
You're getting no video. as
Oh,
far
no
as I-
video.
Sorry.
That's
yeah.
even better.
He doesn't give me a lot of warning when he leaves. He just kind of waves and walks out the
Wasn't
door.
that video like 15 years old or something like that?
Well, the last video, I think it was the 1960s or something. So.
All right, good evening. So you have Jeff's memo. I'm assuming you have all seen that before since it's dated from 3 years ago. So the law hasn't changed in that period. And since you all have been doing this a while, this should all sound fairly familiar to you. I'm just going to cover the highlights of it. And please feel free to stop me at any point. Just interrupt me. One thing I did want to say kind of up front is talk a little bit about our role, Jeff's role. Lawyers, especially local government lawyers, are there to identify risk and liability. That's some of what we do for the district, and that's really what this is. These are the rules that govern your duties and your responsibilities and your behavior as directors, and violating them brings liability and risk to the district and yourself. So it's going to be a really uplifting evening end to your meeting tonight. So, all right, so we'll start with the big one, that's open meeting. So the Colorado Sunshine Law, its meaning is in its name. It's to put light on government action. So it covers any means of communication. So text, email, carrier pigeon, whatever you're doing, talking on the phone, doesn't matter. It's any means of communication when you're talking about public business or proposed legislation, which you don't do a lot of, so it's mostly the discussion of public business. For a long time, there wasn't an administrative exception to the open meetings law, and there now is. So if a board or a director wants to send an email to the other directors and maybe Ron and say, here's a topic I'd like to have on an agenda for discussion, that's now allowed and wasn't before, really. You can talk about organizing meetings. If for some reason you had to reschedule a meeting or you had to have a special meeting, you can have those discussions over email or text or whatever. There's 7 exceptions to the open meetings law for executive sessions. You're probably very familiar with 3 of them: personnel, negotiations, and legal advice. And you've all experienced what that process is like and the strict rules regarding going into executive session. So that's the open meetings law in a nutshell. Its kind of sister law is the Open Records Act. And I always like to tell my clients, kind of connecting the two, a CORA request can reveal an open meetings violation. So if someone makes an email request and you've been talking to each other over email, that open meetings violation can be exposed. So that's just one lesson to be very careful about. So Cora covers any public document which has its definition in the statute. There aren't a lot of exceptions, but generally you should just be careful what you write to anybody, especially emails within the district, and those are going to be public. I often get a lot of questions about communicating on private devices. I'm sure you have constituents who have your personal cell phones and, email or call or text or call. The basic rule is to just be really, really careful. Conduct most of your public business on your Parker Water email, and if you have a Parker Water phone, I don't know if the district gives phones to the directors, conduct your business on those. Just be careful, because a judge can order that your personal information, your personal emails, your personal texts, personal call logs can be disclosed in the Cora litigation. So it's never happened for any of my clients, but it's certainly something to be careful of. All right, so that's open meetings and open records. Conflicts of interest. So Jeff's memo lays out the myriad of conflicts of interest, rules of conduct, criminal violations of the statutes, and interests in contracts. And the basic sum is if you are financially benefiting, or a family member is financially benefiting from a contract with the district or any type of approval or action by the board, that's going to be a conflict of interest. Your interest is no longer aligned, and you're not performing your fiduciary duty to the district and to the public. And so it often comes is when the things are a little bit more gray. It's usually not, oh, my cousin has a business and it's contracting with Parker Water. Those are kind of obvious ones. It becomes more gray when perhaps it's somebody's spouse or it's more distant from you. And I always tell my clients, if you get that feeling in your stomach that like it feels a little too close, call Jeff, call Ron, talk it out. Because sometimes the legal response will be, yeah, I don't really think you have a conflict there. But it's better to talk it out than it is to wonder or have it spring up in a meeting or somebody bring it up, a member of the public bring it up if they know something. So it's better to just talk it out and call us anytime you need that. The other thing is sometimes you might have to recuse yourself. That's just the name of the game. And it's if you're not comfortable, you think you can't be unbiased and you have a conflict, it's better to recuse and actually leave the meeting so as not to influence the board in making any decisions, no signals from the back or anything like that. So you just leave the room while the vote is being taken and the discussion is had. The last piece I wanted to talk about, and Jeff talks about this a little bit in his memo, but the Colorado Governmental Immunity Act talks about, your role and your duty and your scope of authority. And it's really, really important that you understand your lane, basically. You set the district's policy. You steer. You tell Ron and staff where to put the ship, how to drive the ship. Where I want to go here, get us there. They implement what you want. But they are there to manage the district on a day-to-day basis. They deal with the personnel issues. They deal with all the day-to-day stuff in operations. That's not your lane. And if you veer into that lane, you may be considered to be acting what's called willful and wanton under the Colorado Governmental Immunity Act. And you're outside your authority. And when that happens, you can lose your immunity. You can become personally liable for the actions that you take. So you want to be really careful that you understand the scope of that authority and the lane you need to be in when you're a director. So like I said, you're there to set policy, set big picture. That doesn't mean you can't talk to staff and ask questions. Ask questions. I think Ron would encourage you to ask questions and learn. And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about telling staff to go do something, a lower level staff. Ron is who you direct to do stuff, and he implements that policy. So that's kind of a summary, I think, of your legal orientation, telling you all the things you can't do. And I think, is there anything else you'd like me to cover?
No, I did want to let the board know if there's a desire for a Parker Water phone, we could get that for you. All our staff has Parker Water phones now, because years ago, it wasn't as clear that they could access your personal data. But I think the governor actually had his personal phone.
He actually won that case.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he did win that case because the state did not have his call logs. That's what they were asking for. They were asking for basically his cell phone bill, and the state did not maintain it. And in order for something to be a public record, the entity has to keep and maintain it. So he got off on kind of a technicality, but that's an older case. And to be frank, the courts are coming hard on KORA and open meetings with local governments. And there's a lot of people who are lawyers traveling the state and suing local governments on open meetings because there's an attorney's fee provision to that law. And they come in and maybe the local government made a small mistake, and so they lose the case and they have to pay the attorney his fees.
So we have the ability to quickly get you a phone if interested.
Late now. 3 years of records they could go after, right?
And what games does it have on it?
James. Any questions? I know I talk really
Do you
fast.
recommend that the board have a separate, a Parker Water provided phone?
I think it depends on how much district business you do on your personal phone. If you don't really, use your personal phone to talk to constituents or text constituents, and the only person you're calling is Ron, you're probably okay, yeah.
Yeah, any communication we have with Ron's going to be visible on his side.
It will be.
Yeah.
So I haven't switched you guys to my Parker phone yet. You like a lot more work, but yeah.
We don't, that's more coordination. Are you going to be in the office or, some bit of information? We don't really do much business except here. We really don't.
Right. We're not talking to constituents or people out as a normal course of business. We don't do that.
So just to tell you a story, there's a former client of mine on the western slope of Colorado had an issue with their police chief, and it was a big to-do. And an attorney opposing the city asked for all the text messages that the council members had communicated with the police chief while this was all going down. And while there was nothing like incriminating or conspiring, I think it was deeply embarrassing to the council because they said things they probably wouldn't want the public to necessarily hear, considering what the chief had been accused of. And so it's just something to keep in mind. You're like, oh, if I type this text message, would it be okay to the public to read it? And if it's, hey, Ron, can I come in at 9 o'clock to talk to you? That's probably just fine, so.
And that, I think over the years, we've had very little information other than that, so.
Go back to the beginning of email, and the attorneys would say, do you want this email to be printed on the front page of the New York Times? Right? And if you don't, then you probably shouldn't write the email. So it's not new.
You only want to be above the fold for good things, not bad things. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Great.
Seeing none, I think that calls for an adjournment. So be it.
Great, thank you.